She had one heel on, one heel off, ring light blazing like an interrogation lamp, while she staged another authentic moment for her followers. Life coach session prep, she called it. I called it performance art with a business license. Cassidy, I said, hanging my blazer on the chair, kicking off my dress shoes. The day had been brutal. 3 commercial deals on the table, 2 financing snafus, and a client who thought zoning laws were suggestions. The Meridian Industrial Complex alone had taken 6 hours of back and forth with city planning. How about we don't turn dinner into content tonight? She clicked that second heel without turning around, her reflection multiplying in the vanity mirror surrounded by professional lighting equipment I'd installed last month. Brady, you sound like my father. This empowers women. It pays our bills too, in case you forgot. Our bills. Funny how my commission checks became our income, but her coaching revenue stayed hers. The mortgage on this place ran $4,000 a month, not counting the Tesla payments, insurance, and the country club membership that kept my client relationships intact. I haven't forgotten, I said mildly. I just paid the mortgage this morning, again. That got her attention. She spun around, ring light catching the irritation in her eyes. Don't start with the provider complex tonight. I've got 3 calls with potential clients and Kimber's bringing the wine. Kimber's coming over? I looked at the dinner I'd planned to grill, steaks I'd picked up from the butcher, the kind that cost more than most people's grocery budget. Looked at the game I'd planned to watch, looked at the evening I'd planned to spend with my wife instead of her business partner / emotional support animal. She's having a breakthrough moment with her divorce settlement, Cassidy said, already reaching for her phone. We're going live to discuss toxic masculinity and financial control. Very timely content. I folded the mail, set it down carefully next to the stack of business cards she'd had printed. Cassidy Morrison, certified life coach, empowering women to reclaim their power. The certification had cost $3,000. The website development, another $2,000. The professional photos, the branded materials, the LLC filing, all funded by my real estate commissions while she built what she called her authentic brand. What time will that wrap up? When it wraps up, she was texting now, that rapid-fire thumb action that meant I'd already lost her attention. You can watch in the guest room if the conversation triggers you. Triggers me. 6 months ago, that word wasn't in her vocabulary. Now, it was her favorite weapon, borrowed from whatever podcast had poisoned her algorithm that week, along with gaslighting, emotional labor, and financial abuse, terms she wielded like legal briefs against a defendant she'd married. I'm not triggered, I said, pulling a beer from the Sub-Zero we'd stretched to afford. I'm tracking patterns. Tuesday was Kimber until midnight. Thursday was the Women's Empowerment Workshop until 2 a.m. Last night was me building a business while you counted minutes like a hall monitor, she cut in. This is my career, Brady, not a hobby you get to schedule. Career, the coaching practice I'd seed funded, the LLC I'd helped her file, the home office I'd built out with custom shelving and professional lighting. Career implied risk, investment, skin in the game. This was more like subsidized performance therapy with a side of marriage deconstruction for public consumption. But I didn't say that. Men who build things for a living learn when to save their ammunition, especially when dealing with someone who'd turn victim narratives into content strategy. Fair enough, I said instead. I'll be at the country club. Javier's got a poker game running. Her thumb paused mid-text. On a Wednesday? When my schedule opens up, I adapt. I grabbed my keys to the F-150, the reliable truck I drove to job sites, while she took the Tesla to yoga and networking events. Text me when you're done building the empire. She didn't like that line. I could see the response forming, something about toxic masculinity and financial control. But Kimber's white BMW was already pulling into the driveway, wine bottle visible through the windshield, like a battle flag announcing the evening's casualties. 3 hours later, I was up $400 and listening to Javier explain why his latest project manager couldn't manage his way out of a paper bag when my phone buzzed. The poker table at the club was exactly what I needed. 5 guys who built things, fixed things, sold things. Real work that produced measurable results, unlike the ethereal empowerment industry currently occupying my dining room. A message from Cassidy. Still sulking? We're discussing men who use money to control women's independence. Very enlightening conversation. I showed Javier the text. He whistled low, setting down his cards. Brother, that woman's trying to pick a fight through your phone screen. She's trying to bait me into being the villain in whatever narrative she's selling tonight, I corrected. Different strategy. She needs a controlling husband for her content to land with the audience. Tom Reynolds, who owned 3 auto dealerships and had survived his own divorce 2 years prior, leaned back in his chair. They always need you to be the bad guy. Makes the story cleaner. I type back, not sulking, working, close the Meridian industrial deal. Commission should cover your coaching certification renewal and Kimber's wine budget. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, everything isn't about money. I stared at that response for a long moment. Everything wasn't about money, except the house, the cars, the lifestyle, the business, the freedom to turn our dining room into a content studio 3 nights a week. Everything wasn't about money, except all the things that required money to exist. You know what's funny? Said Mike Rodriguez, our group's insurance guy who'd been quietly nursing his bourbon. My ex used to say the same thing, right up until the divorce when suddenly everything became about money. I pocketed the phone and focused on the cards, but the seed of something was taking root. Not anger, clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop pretending the math doesn't matter. At 2:17 a.m., I heard the front door. Soft footsteps, careful movements, the choreography of someone trying not to wake a sleeping spouse. I wasn't sleeping. I was lying in our king-size bed, staring at the ceiling, doing the math on what our life had become. The numbers were stark. My gross income last year hit $240. Her coaching practice generated $18,000, maybe $20, if you counted the affiliate marketing commissions from selling other people's courses to her followers. She slipped in beside me, smelling like wine and whatever expensive candle Kimber preferred, something with vanilla and delusions of empowerment. I kept my breathing steady, pretended to be out. "I know you're awake," she whispered. I didn't respond. "We need to talk about boundaries," she continued, voice getting stronger. "You can't just leave when I'm working. It makes me look bad to my clients." I turned over, faced her in the dark. "You mean it makes your content less authentic when your husband won't play the supporting role?" "I mean, it makes it obvious that you don't support what I'm doing. I bought the equipment. I built the office. I pay the mortgage that lets you do it." My voice stayed level, conversational, the same tone I used with difficult clients who needed reality delivered without emotion. How exactly is that not support? Financial support isn't emotional support, and emotional support isn't paying the bills. She went quiet for a moment. Then, "You're reducing me to an expense. You're reducing me to an ATM machine." Another silence, longer this time. I could hear her breathing, could feel the weight of whatever decision she was making. "Maybe we need some space," she said finally. "Time to evaluate what we both want from this marriage." I felt something click into place. Not anger, clarity, the same feeling I got when a commercial deal finally revealed its true structure, stripped of all the emotional manipulation and wishful thinking. "Space," I repeated, "like the guest bedroom kind or the trial separation kind." "I don't know yet. I just know I can't keep pretending everything's fine when you're clearly resentful of my success." Success. The coaching practice that generated maybe 30% of our household income. The social media following built on sharing intimate details of our marriage without my consent. The business that existed in the gap between my paycheck and our expenses. "I'm not resentful," I said. "I'm tired. There's a difference." "Tired of what?" "Tired of being married to someone who treats our relationship like raw material for content. Tired of funding a lifestyle I'm not invited to participate in. Tired of being cast as the controlling husband in whatever story you're selling your audience." She turned away from me. "You don't understand what I'm building." "I understand exactly what you're building," I replied. "I just don't understand why it requires dismantling us to do it." The next morning, she was gone before I woke up. No note, no text. Just the absence that had become familiar, and the ring light equipment still set up in the dining room, like a crime scene waiting for analysis. I went through my routine: shower, coffee, news, emails. The industrial deal needed final signatures. 2 new properties had hit the market overnight. The world continued to require my attention, regardless of whatever drama was brewing at home. That's the thing about real work. It doesn't pause for relationship theater. At lunch, Javier met me at the office. "You look like hell, hermano." "Feel worse," I admitted. Cassidy wants space. What kind of space? The kind where I keep paying the bills while she figures out if she wants to be married to someone who notices patterns. Javier leaned back in his chair, studying me with the expression of someone who'd built his construction business from nothing and understood the mathematics of relationships that didn't add up. You want some advice from someone who's been divorced twice? Do I have a choice? Space is code for, I want to do whatever I want without consequences, he said. Time to evaluate is code for, I want to see what else is out there while keeping you on standby. That's cynical. That's experience. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I didn't have an answer, not yet, but the framework was forming. That evening, I came home to find Cassidy in the kitchen with her laptop, ring light blazing again. She was mid-session with a client, something about reclaiming personal power in marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was coaching someone else through marriage problems remarkably similar to our own, monetizing the dysfunction she was creating at home. I grabbed a beer and headed for the back deck, the outdoor space where I had installed a professional-grade grill and seating area that had cost more than most people's cars. Through the sliding door, I could hear fragments of the conversation. Financial manipulation, emotional withholding, controlling behaviors. It was like listening to someone describe a stranger who happened to have my name, my job, my bank account, and my marriage certificate. At 10 p.m., she wrapped the call and found me outside. We need to set some ground rules, she announced. No. Hello, no, how was your day? No acknowledgement that I'd been sitting alone while she coached someone else through the exact problems she was creating in our marriage. Ground rules, I repeated. If we're going to work through this, you need to respect my professional boundaries. No interrupting my sessions, no commentary about my clients or my content, no financial pressure when I'm building something meaningful. I took a sip of my beer. Anything else? I need you to understand that your definition of marriage might not be mine. I need partnership, not ownership. Partnership, I said. Interesting word choice. What's that supposed to mean? Partners typically contribute equally. Partners usually consult each other on major decisions. Partners don't usually redesign the relationship without input from the other partner. She crossed her arms. You think I don't contribute? I think your contribution has become increasingly theoretical. Theoretical? Her voice sharpened. I'm building a brand. I'm helping women find their voices. I'm creating something that matters. You're performing our private life for strangers and calling it empowerment. You're threatened by my independence. I'm exhausted by your entitlement. We stared at each other across a silence that felt like a chasm. The outdoor lighting I'd installed cast shadows across her face, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married 8 years ago, before she'd discovered that victimhood was a viable business model. I think, she said slowly, we should take a formal break. 2 weeks, I'll stay at Kimber's. We'll reassess after that. What about the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance? What about them? Who's paying for the break? Her face flushed. Everything isn't about money, Brady. Everything is about something, I replied. Money's just easier to measure than respect. She went inside without another word. I heard drawers opening, suitcase zippers, the sounds of rapid departure, the Tesla's engine humming to life in the driveway, the car I'd co-signed for because her coaching income wasn't enough to qualify for the loan. 20 minutes later, she was back in the kitchen, Louis Vuitton bags by the door, phone in hand like she was documenting this moment for future content. I'm leaving, she announced. I can see that. This doesn't mean we're over. It means we're taking time to figure out what we want. What do you want? She hesitated, and for a moment I thought I might get honesty instead of rehearsed talking points. I want a partner who supports my growth instead of resenting it. And I want a partner who values what we've built instead of using it as raw material for whatever she's building next. She picked up her bags. 2 weeks, Brady, then we'll talk. She left through the front door, engine starting in the driveway. I heard her car pull out, heard the sound, fade down the street toward Kimber's apartment complex, the one where divorced women went to reinvent themselves on their ex-husband's dimes. Then I went inside and did something I hadn't done in months. I turned off all the lights, locked all the doors, and went to bed without checking my phone. For 3 days, the house was museum quiet. No ring lights, no coaching calls, no wine-fueled strategy sessions with Kimber about dismantling the patriarchy one marriage at a time, just space, which turned out to be exactly what I'd needed to think clearly. The silence was productive. I closed the Meridian deal, brought in 2 new commercial listings, and had lunch with Tom Reynolds, who'd been through his own version of this dance. "Best thing that ever happened to me," he said, cutting into his steak. "Took me 6 months to realize I'd been subsidizing my own replacement." I spent those evenings reading contracts instead of walking on eggshells, watched games without commentary about toxic masculinity and sports culture, grilled steaks for one, and enjoyed every bite without justifying my dietary choices to someone whose relationship with food had become another performance for her audience. On Thursday, my phone buzzed at 2:18 a.m. Text from Cassidy. "Stop controlling me like I'm your property." I stared at that message for a long moment. Property. The house I'd qualified for alone because her income wasn't stable enough for the mortgage company to count. The cars I'd financed. The lifestyle I'd built that she'd moved into like a tenant claiming squatters' rights. But that wasn't what she meant. And we both knew it. I typed back, "Stop coming home like you're my wife." I hit send and set the phone aside. 5 minutes later, it started ringing. Call from Cassidy. I declined. Call from Cassidy. Declined. Call from Kimber. Declined. Call from unknown number, probably one of Kimber's empowerment circle, ready to lecture me about emotional availability. Declined. Call from Cassidy. Declined. The phone lit up like a Christmas tree. 15 missed calls in rapid succession, each one more desperate than the last. I could picture the scene at Kimber's place. Wine glasses, laptop open, both of them staring at my response like it was a foreign language they couldn't decode. Then the text started. "We need to talk right now. You can't just throw away 8 years. I'm coming over. This isn't over. Brady, please, don't do this. We can work this out. I love you. Answer your phone. I'm on my way." I turned the phone off and went back to sleep. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without interruption. The next morning, I drove to the office with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The difference was remarkable. No walking on eggshells, no calculating responses to avoid triggering another content session about my inadequacies as a modern husband. Just focus. The industrial deal closed without complications. 2 new listings came in before lunch. Javier brought coffee and asked no questions, but I could see him watching me with the satisfied expression of a man who'd watched a friend finally wake up from a bad dream. At lunch, I made a decision that had been crystallizing for weeks. I called my attorney. "Brady Morrison for Dean Hutchins," I told his secretary. "Brady," Dean said when I walked into his office that afternoon. We'd handled the closing on my first commercial property 5 years ago, and he'd steered me through the LLC formation for the investment portfolio I'd been building. "Been a while. What's on your mind?" "Hypothetically," I said, "if someone wanted to protect their assets during a trial separation, what would that look like?" Dean leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled. He'd been practicing family law for 20 years and had the expression of someone who'd seen this conversation before. "Hypothetically, that depends on what assets we're talking about and how they're currently structured. Commercial real estate portfolio, investment accounts, business equity, marital home. Hypothetically, Texas is a community property state, but there are strategies for protecting premarital assets and income generated from separate property. What about support obligations? Hypothetically, temporary support depends on need and ability to pay. If someone has been supporting a spouse's business venture that doesn't generate significant income," he let the sentence hang in the air like smoke from an expensive cigar. "Hypothetically," I said, "how long would it take to draft separation papers that protect someone's interests while allowing space for reconciliation? Hypothetically, 3 to 5 business days." I pulled out my checkbook. "Let's stop speaking hypothetically." Dean's expression didn't change, but I saw the slight nod of professional recognition. He'd handled enough of these cases to know the difference between emotional decisions and strategic ones. "I'll need a complete financial picture: assets, debts, income streams, business interests." I brought everything. I slid the folder across his desk. 8 years of tax returns, bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds. The paperwork of a life built systematically, methodically, with the long-term thinking that separates builders from consumers. He flipped through the documents with practiced efficiency. Commercial real estate, investment accounts, business equity in the brokerage, primary residence. He paused at the mortgage documents. This is all in your name. Her credit wasn't strong enough to qualify when we bought it. Income too irregular. And the coaching business? LLC formation I helped her file. Equipment I purchased. Office space I built out in our home. I kept my voice neutral, factual. Initial funding came from my savings account. Revenue? Last year, maybe 18,000. This year, trending lower despite the increased time investment. Dean made notes. What about support expectations? She's been accustomed to a lifestyle that requires about twice her current earning capacity. Can you document her spending patterns? I pulled out another folder. Credit card statements, bank records, receipts. The paper trail of someone who'd confused earning money with having access to it. Country club dues, car payments, shopping, dining, entertainment. The coaching business operates at a loss when you factor in her personal expenses. Any children? No. Good. That simplifies things considerably. He closed the folder. I can have preliminary separation papers drawn up by Tuesday. They'll establish separate maintenance, asset protection, and guidelines for any potential reconciliation. What kind of timeline are we looking at if this goes the other direction? In Texas, 60-day waiting period minimum for divorce. But given the asset structure and income disparity, this could resolve much faster if she decides she prefers the certainty of settlement to the uncertainty of litigation. I signed the retainer agreement and walked out of Dean's office with the kind of clarity that comes from having a plan. Not anger, not revenge, just the systematic protection of what I'd built. That evening I came home to find Cassidy's Tesla in the driveway. She was sitting on the front steps, looking smaller than I'd seen her in months. Phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline to whatever support network had convinced her that showing up unannounced was a winning strategy. "We need to talk," she said when I got out of my truck. "Dean Hutchins thinks so too," I replied, walking past her to unlock the front door. "Who's Dean Hutchins?" "My attorney." She followed me inside. "Brady, you can't be serious. Serious as a mortgage payment. This is insane. We had one fight." I turned to face her. "Cassidy, we've had the same fight for 8 months. You just kept changing the language. I want to work this out. You want to work out an arrangement where I fund your lifestyle while you figure out whether you want to be married to someone who notices patterns. That's not what this is. Then what is it?" She sat down at the kitchen table, in the same chair where she'd made her demands about ground rules 3 days ago. "It's me trying to build something meaningful while navigating a husband who seems threatened by my success." "Your success?" I repeated. "The coaching practice that generated $18,000 last year. The brand built on sharing our private business with strangers. The empire funded by my commission checks. Money isn't everything." "You're right," I said. "Respect matters more. Partnership matters more. Actually being married instead of performing. Marriage for content matters more." "So what now? You're just done?" "I'm done pretending this works." She reached across the table, tried to take my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't participate either. Her fingers felt cold, uncertain. Nothing like the confident woman who commanded an audience of followers seeking empowerment advice. "Brady, I love you. I want this to work, but I need you to meet me halfway." "What does halfway look like?" "It looks like supporting my business without trying to control it. It looks like understanding that growth requires change. It looks like being proud of what I'm building instead of threatened by it. And what do I get in return? You get a wife who's fulfilled, who's contributing, who's growing. I get a content creator who's married to me for tax purposes. That's not fair. Neither is asking me to fund my own replacement." She went quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, and I could hear the first genuine uncertainty she'd shown in months. "Is there any version of this where you don't see my success as competition? Is there any version where your success doesn't require treating our marriage like raw material?" Another silence. I could see her processing, maybe for the first time, that this wasn't a negotiation she could win with talking points and emotional manipulation. "I think," she said finally, "we want different things. I think you want 2 different lives and expect me to pay for both." She nodded slowly, like she was finally hearing something she'd been trying to avoid. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I am." She left that night with another suitcase. This time, she didn't set a timeline for coming back, and I didn't ask for one. The papers from Dean arrived 3 days later, clean, comprehensive, protective. I signed them and had them delivered to Kimber's address by certified mail. 2 weeks after that, Cassidy signed them too. No phone calls, no dramatic confrontations, no attempts at last-minute negotiation. Just her signature on legal documents that formalized what we both finally understood. Some things can't be fixed with better communication. 6 months later, I wake before my alarm in a house that doesn't echo with the sound of ring lights and performance therapy. It's a smaller place with clean lines and a backyard that makes sense in the morning light. No McMansion pretensions, no HOA restrictions, just a well-built home on 3 acres outside Austin, where I can see the horizon from my kitchen window. There's a practical F-250 in the driveway that handles both job sites and weekend adventures, and a Harley-Davidson in the garage for when I want to remember what freedom feels like on 2 wheels. The motorcycle was my first purchase after the divorce finalized. Not a midlife crisis, just a man rediscovering what he enjoyed before his preferences became negotiation points. The business is thriving because I have the energy to focus on what I do best. Javier and I expanded the portfolio, brought in 2 new agents, and landed the contract for the new industrial park development on the east side of town. The commission from that alone will fund the next 5 years of whatever life I choose to build. On Saturdays, I play golf with the guys from the country club, Tom Reynolds, Mike Rodriguez, and Dean Hutchins, who's become more friend than attorney. We don't talk about our ex-wives or relationship failures. We talk about business, sports, travel plans, and the simple pleasure of spending money on experiences instead of subsidizing someone else's lifestyle choices. On Sundays, I take long rides through hill country with Brooke, who manages a small accounting firm and thinks a good relationship is one where nobody has to perform their happiness for strangers. She's 34, divorced once herself, and learned the difference between supporting someone's dreams and funding their delusions. Brooke doesn't need an audience to feel valuable. She needs a partner she can trust, and trust, it turns out, is built on consistent actions over time, not grand gestures and social media proclamations. When she says she'll be somewhere at 7, she's there at 6:55. When she commits to something, she follows through. When she disagrees with me, she says so directly instead of passive-aggressively posting about it online. She also pays her own bills, drives her own car, and contributes to our shared expenses without keeping score or treating partnership like a business transaction where emotional labor gets itemized and invoiced. The difference is remarkable. Cassidy's coaching business folded 4 months after the divorce finalized. Turned out her brand of empowerment was hard to monetize without the financial stability I'd provided, and the marriage drama that had fueled her content. Her follower count plummeted once she ran out of husband-bashing material, and potential clients apparently weren't interested in life advice from someone whose life was visibly falling apart in real time. Kimber lasted about 6 weeks as a roommate before their friendship imploded over unpaid bills and competing victim narratives. 2 women who'd built their identities around what was wrong with their marriages discovered they had very little else to talk about once the marriages ended. Last I heard through Tom Reynolds, whose ex-wife runs in the same social circles, Cassidy had moved back in with her parents in Dallas and taken a job at a marketing agency, the kind of steady employment she'd dismissed as soul-crushing back when she was building her empire on my dime. I don't track her social media. I don't drive past the old house, which sold 3 months ago to a young couple who probably think they're getting their dream home instead of the stage set for someone else's nightmare. I don't wait for apologies or explanations or the dramatic reconciliation scene she probably still believes is coming. I just wake up every morning in a life that belongs to me, with someone who values what we're building, instead of using it as raw material for whatever she's building next. The contrast is instructive. Cassidy needed drama to feel alive, needed conflict to generate content, needed problems to solve so she could feel important. Brooke needs trust, consistency, and the quiet satisfaction of building something real with someone who shows up. Brooke and I are talking about buying a ranch together, not as some grand romantic gesture, but as a practical business decision between 2 adults who have learned to recognize the difference between love and performance. We want the same things: space, privacy, the freedom to live without an audience, and the peace that comes from being with someone who doesn't need you to be anyone other than who you are. People ask if I regret the divorce. I don't. I regret waiting as long as I did to call entitlement by its name. I regret funding someone's campaign against our marriage. I regret treating respect like a luxury instead of a requirement. But I don't regret ending something that had stopped working long before either of us admitted it. You can love someone and still refuse to subsidize their disrespect. You can want their happiness and still insist on your own dignity. You can walk away without burning anything down and still never look back. Hard lines don't make you the villain in someone else's story. They make you the author of your own. The morning light streams through windows that don't have ring lights in front of them, across a kitchen table where no one's staging authentic moments for public consumption. I make coffee in a house where the only audience is me, and if that sounds lonely to someone who needs constant validation, then they've never experienced the peace of a life that doesn't require performance. Brooke's coming by later to look at ranch listings. We'll drive out to see 3 properties, evaluate them based on practical considerations like water rights and soil quality, and make decisions together like partners who trust each other's judgment. No drama, no content, no audience. Just 2 people building something real in a world that's forgotten what real looks like. And clarity, it turns out, is the only foundation worth building on.